Welcome everyone to Frank Analysis. I'm your host Franco. There's a lot of topics to talk about today, and I'm happy to be joined today, returning to the show, Ali Alexandra and Marcus Cage. First time on the show together at the same time, and I'm really excited to talk about these topics. But yeah, we'll go ahead
Same.
and introduce the guests here. We have Ali Alexandra, who is a co-host of the Slow News Day show. How are you doing, Ali?
Good. Thank you for having me on. Good to be back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Other than just being
Good.
annoyed at some of the trolls that are on Twitter that just buy
Oh
too much
my
into the
gosh.
mainstream media narrative, but we'll
They're
get
out
into that when
there.
we talk about the
Yeah,
Great Reset stuff.
right on.
And I have Marcus Cage on here. I love having Marcus on because we always get into really deep conversations about history. How are you doing, Marcus?
I'm doing good, Franco. And hey, Ali, I'm really glad to be back. I always have a lot of fun when I'm over here on Franco's show. Um,
Yeah.
it gives me a time to focus back on some of the integral policy issues that are going on, and it's directed from my show, which kind of ranges all over the place. Or my shows, if you all are familiar with my content, I am Marcus Cage from the Political Matrix, and what I've been thinking with Marcus Cage, and Hebrew apologetics with Marcus Cage also. So if you are not following or subscribing, please check out my channels. A lot of interesting stuff on there.
There you have
Right
it.
on.
Yeah, so subscribe to Slow News Day Show and subscribe to
Yeah.
Marcus's channels. I'm gonna have that all linked in the description, and I'm gonna cut up these clips because we're gonna go into a lot of great topics today. So starting with today, let's talk a bit more about World Press Freedom Day because I mentioned it yesterday when I went live when I talked to that AOC supporter, but I mean I
Mm.
introduced that it was World Press Freedom Day, but I didn't go into depth about how there's these hypocrites that are in the Biden administration, these imperialists that are acting as if they're for press freedom. Meanwhile, they're still torturing Julian Assange in the UK for revealing U.S. war crimes. So here's
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Blinken. This is the tweet that he posted yesterday. He said, on World Press Freedom Day, the United States continues to advocate for press freedom. No, they don't. The safety of
No.
journalists worldwide and access to information on and offline. No, they don't, because they're censoring people. They're censoring people like crazy more than ever. They're
Mm-hmm.
advocating for to implement laws to censor more people. They're pushing for Twitter, for YouTube, for Facebook to censor more people. Misinformation, but it's really just information that goes against and challenges their power.
Mm-hmm.
And free and independent press ensures the public has access to information. Knowledge is power. And then I said, I retweeted that and I said, free Assange. The Biden administration is a fascist and imperialist administration that attacks press freedom. So Ali just told me that she's working on an article that's going to go
I
into depths on
am.
how the Biden administration, all those guys are Anthony Blinken, Avril Haines, Lloyd Austin. They're all imperialists and fascists. So Ali, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on Anthony Blinken's tweet? And
I mean,
yeah,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I mean, he's full of shit. Like, wait, I can swear on here, right? Are we? I'm at
Yeah,
the point now.
yeah,
I'm
you
so
can swear
used
on
to
here.
being on slow news day where you
I don't.
just
I
swear
usually
all the
don't swear, but
time.
that's just me. But
Try to keep it, yeah.
when I
But
get
no, but
really
this,
angry, I swear more.
yeah, this particular topic is infuriating to me because Biden, I mean, Blinken, I'm not surprised, that he said that, but Blinken's been working with Biden for 20 years now, if not longer. They're old friends. They all come from the same school of thought, which is this like neoliberal way of expanding democracy through the free press. But I say free press meaning press that is approved, press that makes the United States look good. I mean, Biden has actually been, he's had a hand in lots of unfortunate pieces of legislation for our country. Obviously, the crime bill, he had a hand in the Patriot Act. He also had a direct hand in restructuring um, the United States Information Agency, which has ultimately become like it was just one point like a CIA propaganda like arm of our country, and now it's of course an independent organization and it's called something different. But my point here is that Biden was he was a key person in crafting this legislative amendment to basically establish like a public-private partnership with that propaganda wing of the CIA. This is back in like the 90s. He basically had a hand in creating that public-private partnership so that this particular, propaganda wing wouldn't actually be seen as part of the government anymore. It would be a separate entity, but it's supported by federal dollars. So and I'll go into more of this in my article, but my larger point is that Joe Biden is most certainly not for all free press, aside from the fact that Julian Assange is still in prison. If he gave a shit about free press or anything resembling that, Julian Assange would be he would be out. He would be free. But Biden's history in just kind of spreading a certain narrative and only one narrative that makes the United States look good and our enemies look bad, and also making sure that propaganda is infiltrating the countries that we, want to go over and continue just imperializing. So if you can't tell, Biden gets me on some rants, which is good because I've had a lot of writer's block lately. So yeah, Biden is more of a fascist than people who, spent years fighting Trump's fascism. You haven't seen anything yet because Biden is the king of public-private partnerships. We heard that the other night in his speech to Congress. He loves a good public-private partnership. And to me, fascism is the marriage of the corporation and the state. And that's exactly what Joe Biden stands for. So that's my spiel on that.
And historically, that's the definition of fascism. Like that's what Mussolini said. It's the merger of the corporations and the state. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like public-private partnership. And that's what's discussed a lot with the Great Reset. And not only that, Biden has been an architect for so many fascist policies. Like when it comes to the Patriot Act, he was an architect for that. When it comes to the 1994 crime bill, he was an architect for that. He was an architect for militarizing the police under the Obama administration. Marcus, what are your thoughts on this, man? How disgusted are you with all this?
I agree with both your points. I mean, making a lot of great points. But a lot of people forget right before the crime bill, there was actually another crime bill before that one, which was going to be a little bit harsher, but they were not able to get all those things approved. So what Biden decided to do was the next time around, what I'll do is I'll take an issue, which I know they can't vote against. I'll pair that with it and then dare them to go against it. So that's why they put the Violence Against Women Act with it, because they knew plenty of Democrats were not going to be cool with that. And so the only way that he was going to force that through is, okay, I'm going to make you look bad. You don't want to protect abused women? What kind of person, would you be? So that would be like a political death knell in your reelection. And so he knew that. And Biden has always been a person who has been clever at finding ways to twist arms to get his policies through. And what people say, oh, well, he might not have supported this or supported that, or in the media said this. If you follow his actions and you go down a little bit further, what you'll find is almost everything he was against, he ended up becoming for it or adding portions into it or trying to manipulate it or mold it. Biden has been very active on the security state side throughout his whole entire career. I mean, you go all the way back to Reagan. He was integral with the whole Iran-Contra stuff also. A lot of people don't realize that
he was so involved.
Biden, his whole, his image and persona, which he tried to portray from day one was, I'm kind of more of a progressive type, new age politician. I'm going to be for the people, like you said, average Joe. That's what he wanted to portray. But we also got, here should have been the biggest, flashing red light, I feel like, for all of us. Just think about which state he's from. Joe Biden came from Delaware. And Joe Biden is literally the most corrupt man from the most corrupt state that's tied in with big business. And it's you guys just were so blindsided and so fearful of Trump that you just completely ignored the 800-pound gorilla that's right behind you. It's like watching somebody run from a bee while they got a cougar looking right at him. It's like, are you insane?
Mhm.
So when I looked at Trump as the type of person where I didn't agree with damn near anything he said, but I knew one thing about Trump. He's lazy. He's not going to follow through with anything. Trump's going to say something for the attention he gets, and then everybody will try to, put something together to not make him look like a fool. But he has no plan. He's not really trying to push anything that he's actually saying. He's just doing it for the fame.
Yeah.
But Biden is an ideologue. He is a hardcore Zionist.
Yes, he is.
He said it himself.
He did. I found the quote today.
Remember that, Marcus? He's like, I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
Yeah, I literally just came across that quote, like just doing research today. I forgot about it.
I mean, that's what it's like everything that I can think about. I think if I can name any politician in my lifetime that has been more detrimental to the Black community, there's nobody that tops the bill than Joe Biden. And I'm like, how in the hell did they get so good at propaganda that they convinced 90-something% of eligible voting, I guess, regular Black voters to support him? Like, how destroyed of a people, like I look at it, like almost like the Willie Lynch syndrome. It kicked the shit out of the Black community, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
For us not even to be able to pay attention to this guy, we're not saying that some politicians can't possibly help in some ways, but this guy, of all people,
that's the power of U.S. corporate media. They successfully propagandized the most propagandized people in the world, the U.S. population.
Yeah,
and it's Go ahead, Ali.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, he's what kind of person? Let's just focus on the fact that he had one presidential run. I mean, the man, like when he plagiarized, it was like a Kennedy's speech, like that. I mean, he's so
my God, yeah,
blatantly, he's a loser. Like he continues over and over again, and so at the end of it, he kind of almost ran on that. He's like, I've almost been trying. Yeah, oh yeah, he's a fraud. He's a snake. I really don't talk about politicians much, but Joe Biden though, like because he is a career politician through and through. I mean, he will truly say whatever he needs to say whenever it's convenient. I mean, and I found that if you want to hear Biden at his most honest, like in his most honest form, it's usually at like a Davos panel or at the Council on Foreign Relations. He loves.
Is that his private position that comes out? Because these people have public and private.
Oh yes, that's where his private self comes out. But the dumbass doesn't realize that he's on camera a lot of the time still. So he'll say things like there was a one that I found where and I'll find it again and put it out with this article or one of the articles I've got coming out. He says, back in my country we call it in Detroit the hood. He just says things like that out loud, or he'll just say things like they know me as middle class Joe, or he'll say things like now I'm talking to a room of people that are far more established, distinguished and better than the average American. Like he thinks down on most Americans. They're a nuisance to him. He's very, very honest with these global groups because that's where his interests are.
There's video evidence of him pushing for war and shaming people for not wanting to go to war with like Iraq, with Afghanistan, like shaming like whistleblowers too.
Yeah,
who are like, oh look, like we didn't see any evidence of there being any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and then he shames them, and then he comes out here years later saying that I was resisting against the Bush administration.
No, you weren't. And another beautiful thing about Biden is like he does kind of make it easy because, again, the dumbass forgets that he says a lot of stuff out loud that like maybe if you're not listening carefully, you miss it. But when you are like, what you're listening for, he's pretty open about like what he thinks and how he's going to operate and what he's going to do. He says a lot of stuff out loud. He fumbles a lot, and it's fun for me just because I'm like, another thing I can just, like there's receipts. There's lots of politicians that are not as transparent as he is. But he ran on emotion like that. He said the reason that he ran for president was because of what happened in Charlottesville. And I've heard so many speeches of him just start out with like a story about his son. I'm sorry that happened, but that's not a reason that you should be elected
Emotional
to be president.
manipulation.
It is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Shout out to Propaganda, Anthony Reyes in the chat. Shout out to Steve from Slow News Day, and Glory Jones. Steve is saying that he's worked with Marcus since the beginning of his show.
Yes,
That's
he has.
awesome.
Yes, he
Oh,
has.
awesome.
Oh, yeah, I got so much love for my man over there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done plenty of sit downs and interviews and talk about a bunch of different subjects. And so, hats off to Slow Day News over there. Glory, she's a sweetheart. Also, I got to be on with her too. So,
Oh
those
yeah,
who
with that
do not know
takedown.
about Slow Day News, check what's going on up there, because
Yeah.
they're talking about a lot of issues that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I'm pretty fucking excited to be with them. So I could just listen to them talk all day. So yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something I wanted to say, because when you start talking about the emotion part, it reminded me of something. Because not too long ago, I was just doing something on the political matrix about propaganda. And I was going back to some of the early roots of it with Edward Bernays. And then you get into Edward Bernays and his uncle Sigmund Freud, and how they start using like freedom torches and all that stuff like that, propaganda. And then they eventually start moving into the business sector. And it got so pervasive, eventually those methods started to become used throughout politics, throughout a lot of our major media. That's the reason why it seems so cookie cutter and kind of, unorganic.
That's the father of propaganda.
This formula of propaganda that's been going on. And it's mostly started on an emotional tie they try to make with you to try to manipulate you on your emotions. Whether it's going to be fear, whether it's pride, whether it's insecurity, that's what they're looking for, to expose whatever weakness or perceived weakness that you have to get you to buy whatever product or whatever notion they're trying to sell.
Right, like with women and smoking and the torches of freedom. That's crazy. I just like that topic, just like propaganda itself and narrative management. That's probably my favorite thing to discuss, write about anything. So I just actually got a piece of art by, not like it's not original, but Edward Bernays, like a poster thing that I'm gonna frame, because I love all this stuff. So
we'll have to bring you on the political matrix then, for
sure.
interview. And I know Chris and Emmanuel, they love to talk to you about some of these topics. So open invitation, you're definitely welcome. And the same with the whole Slow Day News.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that would be an awesome collab. Yeah, and Ali, when you publish that article that you're working on, you should come on this show too, and
I will
talk about freaking Biden.
Blab about I'll have a few coming out, because that man pisses. I forgot how much that man pisses me off. So